I'd like to share with you a few differences that I've noticed between funerals in the States versus funerals here in the Czech Republic. I'm Katrina, an American living in České Budějovice, Czech Republic, and you're watching Czeching with Katrina. I've attended many funerals in the United States, but today I attended the second funeral I've ever attended here in the Czech Republic. The funeral I attended today was for a very close friend of my mother-in-law. The funeral I attended here in the Czech Republic a few years ago was also for a very close friend of my mother-in-law. So my perspective on funerals here in the Czech Republic is going to be based on attending the funeral of a very close family friend. I noticed many cultural differences between funerals here in the Czech Republic and funerals back in the United States. Now, like I said, I've only attended 2 funerals, therefore I only have the perspective of 2, but I did ask my Czech husband what the traditions were and if this was normal or if this was abnormal. In the States, I grew up attending funerals my entire life, many of them, given that I come from a very large family and my dad was a pastor of several different churches, so there was a lot of people in our life that died. So let's start with before the actual funeral, shortly after the loved one dies. Shortly after the loved one passes away, the family of the loved one is usually surrounded by other loved ones. In other words, friends of the family come over, family members gather together. So say a grandmother dies in her 80s, all of her children are going to be gathering together every day, all day long, all of her grandchildren, all of her close friends. So the family of that loved one who died are going to be surrounded by other people for days before the funeral. The funeral's usually within 3 or 4 days after the loved one passes away, and the family members are rarely alone. Lots of family, lots of friends. They come by the house, they bring food, and neighbors will send over a casserole. You might order 5 pizzas and have them sent to the house. So there's plenty of food coming to the house for days, and there's plenty of people at your house. For instance, when mine and my husband's brother, our brothers died together in a house fire. Our house was just filled with people nonstop, but we never had to cook or worry about food or anything for them. A family friend might bring over a bunch of paper towels and toilet paper. So it's just very communal. And I've not noticed that here in Czech Republic. The 2 funerals I've attended are very close friends of my mother-in-law, and we didn't go to the family's house, we didn't send food, we didn't do anything like that. We talked to them, said we're sorry, condolences. They talked on the phone. This particular time, one of the sons came to my mother-in-law's house, but otherwise there was no gathering and being together all the time. Secondly, before the funeral, we have in America what we call a viewing. So that is usually the night before the day of the funeral for 2 to 3 hours. My stepdad just passed away in November of 21, and the viewing was 6 hours long. That's rather a long one. They're average 2 to 3, but it's at the funeral home, and it's usually an open casket, and so they actually see the deceased body with an open casket, and they pay the respects to the family. And that's also for people who can't attend the funeral, but even people who plan to attend the funeral usually also attend the viewing. There's also usually many photos of the deceased's life. Many photos with his loved ones and family members, things he likes to do. Many times now, recently, probably in the last 15 years, there's been a video as well, so that somebody in the family will gather together all the photos and put music to it, and there'll be a video that just runs constantly during the viewing where everyone can just look at this video of this person's life. So I asked my husband, is there usually a viewing here in Czech Republic? And he said he's never been to one here and never heard of one, even growing up here. So I guess they don't have those. Let's talk about flowers. So in the States, people actually call the flower shop and have flowers delivered to the funeral home, usually at the viewing. So that's usually the day before the funeral. The flowers are all there at the viewing. And then the funeral director and his employees take the flowers to the church where the actual funeral is going to take place and set up all the flowers there as well. So here in the Czech Republic, people actually bring flowers to the funeral, so they'll stop at a flower shop on the way to the funeral, and they'll have flowers made up. They're not usually in vases or anything. They just bring a bundle of flowers and they lay them on the floor in front of the casket. But I thought that was really nice, because in the States, to order flowers and have them delivered to the funeral home, it's really kind of impossible to do it without spending at least $75. And sometimes that can be hard for some people. $75 is a lot of money. They might want to give flowers to the deceased, but nobody ever brings flowers and sets them down. So you'd really have to order them. And so some people just don't give flowers, even though they might want to. I thought it was really nice here that people actually come to the funeral with their flowers in hand and they lay them down in front of the casket. I wish that was something we had back in the States. So the actual funeral either takes place at a funeral home or a church. Most of the time it's a church. Here in Czech Republic, most of these funerals take place in a church or a chapel, and they're like old churches with no heating. So both funerals I've attended have been in the winter, and it's really, really cold. There's no heat. Here in Czech Republic, the casket is almost always closed, I guess. It's not tradition for the casket to be open and people to be able to actually view the dead body. The actual funeral was quite different than the two funerals I've attended here. Here in the Czech Republic, the funerals I've been to have only been, 15, 20 minutes. It's my understanding they will most of the time hire a public speaker to do the funeral, or a family member will speak and say something nice. But the funerals, there's not much to them. There's some songs and somebody says something little. In the States, they run about an hour, and I'm not talking about Catholic funerals, because those can go 2 or 3 hours, but just a regular funeral, either a non-religious funeral or a Protestant funeral, those last about an hour to an hour and a half. There's usually a pastor or a priest. Even for secular funerals, there's usually a religious man presents a eulogy, so he talks about the person's life, and then he'll open the floor to others. So pretty much anybody at the funeral who wants to speak will get up and speak. There's also usually at least 2 songs that get played. At the end of the funeral, I have noticed here in Czech Republic that the family members will say goodbye first to the casket. They'll go and touch the casket. I noticed some people will make a little cross with their finger on the casket, and then they'll leave. In the States, the funeral directors actually dismiss people from the last row going forward. So like here in the States, the people who are closest to the deceased sit closest to the casket. So then the funeral director will dismiss from the last row. People will go out, pay their last respects, and then leave, and it gets all the way to the front where it's just the family, and then the funeral director will actually close the doors of the sanctuary, and the family will have alone time with the deceased body at the casket to be the last ones to say goodbye and spend as much time as they want saying goodbye while everybody else waits outside. In the United States, we have a graveside ceremony and a procession, which I haven't seen here. When you pull up to the funeral, there's always people outside in the parking lot, either at the church or the funeral home, wherever the funeral is, and they'll ask you if you're going to the graveside. And if you say yes, then they direct you to park in a certain place, and if you say no, then you can park in a different place. And they'll put this flag on your car. It's like a magnet that sticks on your car, and there's this flag waving, and once the body's loaded into the hearse, everybody actually follows the hearse to the cemetery, and all traffic has to stop so that you stay in line. So every car with a flag on it gets to go through that line. So they go through red lights, they go through stop signs, and some cities will require an officer to escort in the front and in the back. So if you're not at a funeral that day, it's like catching a train. You might catch a funeral procession, and there might be 40 cars in that where you are stuck at a light or a stop sign waiting for those 40 cars to pass by, and that's a sign of respect that you wouldn't even try to go. But if you would go, it would be illegal for one, and plus very disrespectful. then everyone gets to the cemetery, and there's usually a tent set up over the graveside. If it's winter, the grave isn't yet dug, but there's still this stand there for the casket to go on. If it's summer, they'll actually dig the hole and put the casket next to it. So everybody will gather around that. The pallbearers once again carry the casket to the graveside, and then there's another very small ceremony. Somebody who didn't want to talk at the funeral might want to talk at the graveside. The pastor says a number of things regarding burial and why they go into the ground. There is some cremation in the United States. It's not that common as it is here, but my understanding is cremation's quite common here nowadays, so you really wouldn't have a graveside ceremony. From my understanding, there used to be graveside ceremonies here. If it was summertime, they'd actually lower the casket into the grave, which you don't see often in the States. Once everyone leaves the graveside, then there's a big dinner. And I mean a big dinner. Like, that's for anybody who came to the funeral is invited to the dinner. And the food is usually brought by friends and family. Sometimes it's catered. Like I said, I grew up as a pastor's daughter, so most of the funerals I attended, the ladies in the church prepared the dinner, cleaned up the mess afterwards. A lot of times for families who don't attend church, sometimes they'll have it catered, but usually some people that are close to the family will step up and say, let me handle that for you. Some people will stay back from the graveside in order to get the food ready for when people come back from the graveside. But yes, it's a large dinner for everyone that attends the funeral. I've noticed here in the Czech Republic that's not really done. Sometimes they have nothing planned. Sometimes after the funeral they say, hey, who would like to go eat? Let's go get something to eat. And so just people who want to go, but most people just go home. The funeral I attended a couple years back, they had a dinner, but it was not for everyone who attended the funeral. There was probably 15 of us. I invited just family and some really close friends, and that was at a restaurant. So both times it's been at a restaurant, and it's not really for everyone. It's just for a select few. So let me know if I got anything wrong about funerals here in the Czech Republic. Like I said, I've only attended 2 and asked family members about traditions and did a little research online, but there wasn't much there. Also, let me know what your thoughts are about the differences between funerals in the Czech Republic and here in the States. Tak, příští den, ciao! If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification button.